Well, hello everyone. This is Marcia Sinetar. I want to welcome you to another archived collection of interviews, and this time with one of my favorite interviewers, Father Lengwin from KDAY. The name of the program is called Amplify, and Amplify has been on the air for years, as far as I can recall. This interview was done, I think, close to post 9/11. So Father Lengwin and I were kind of reminiscing a little bit about 9/11 before the interview, as I recall, and you're going to hear some references that I make during the interview to people that are no longer with us. But you'll understand, of course, that an archive means just that. It's something that is in my collection. I want to save it, preserve it, and share it with you. You will also hear a reference to a story. Father Lengwin started with a beautiful story. It was very long. I had to cut it. I'm told that today's listeners to audios, to anything, is short. The attention span is short. And so, with apologies to Father Lengwin, I cut it. The other thing I wanted to mention is that you will hear reference to a sanctuary for contemplative living. That's still in the works. It's been a long time coming. I think I'll probably do it on my site only for helping professionals so that they can help other people develop their own contemplative life along the lines that I think are traditional and at the same time very, very practical for modern living. So with that, I want to welcome you to the interview, and I was making this intro, not the interview, but the introduction today. It's New Year's Day, 2024. And I want to wish everybody that's listening, whether you listen on New Year's Day or not, the most wonderful year, full of health and joy and real creative expression. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Good evening and welcome to Amplify, a telephone talk show that looks at life from a religious perspective. I'm Father Ron Lengwin, hoping that you have felt the warmth of God's love in your life this day, especially the joy you experience when you share God's love with others. Our guest writes in the book that she has written most recently, "Don't Call Me Old, I'm Just Awakening, Spiritual Encouragement for Later Life." Spiritual awakening, we are told by mystic author Evelyn Underhill, is an elevation of consciousness sparked by our conviction that we are more than the flesh, that God, or the highest life, power, and intelligence, is at hand, and that we are somehow at one with that life, that divine love. Spiritual awakening lifts so many sad moods linked to aging, melancholy, the anxiety born of our sense of mortality, our feelings of isolation. Awakening brings with it the certainty that the Lord is our shepherd, that we shall never want. Thus do we savor some bit of sublime imperishability while here on earth. Only this taste of the divine love restores us. It blesses old age, quote unquote, with a lavish feel. The advanced years that once seemed so chilling now warm us, seem a winter long past. At our ground of being, we meet each day as an opportunity to align ourselves with the everlasting reality that heals. Thus my title. While to others we may appear old, graying, dated, antique, in our heart of hearts, we're just realizing the joy, the beauty, the sacred depths of life. How ironic that what looks to the senses as the end of life is truly the beginning. Marcia Sinetar is the best-selling author of Do What You Love, The Money Will Follow, and Ordinary People as Monks and Mystics. books that close the gap between the material and the spiritual. She is one of America's foremost exponents on the practical value of mature spirituality. She currently lives in the Pacific Northwest, where she is creating a sanctuary for contemplative spirituality, helping professionals to do what they love. And she has had a long life, a lifelong love affair with human talent of every sort. Marcia Sinetar, welcome back to Amplify.
Oh, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be with you, Father Lengwin, and what a gorgeous story you started with.
Thank you. It's been too long. As I mentioned to you on the phone, it seems like we missed one of your books.
Well, I'm going to send you one. As soon as I can get a hold of it, you're going to get a copy, and then we'll see what's what on that one.
Good. Thank you. Tell us a little bit about the state of your sanctuary.
Well, right now it's only online. And as a matter of fact, this Friday I'm going to meet with a few colleagues to see what we can do to actually put some physical structure to it. It's pretty tough to live a contemplative writer's life as I do, and then on the one hand, and on the other hand, want to create something quiet and small for people who want to learn more about contemplative living. But we'll get it together.
Where did, or how did your lifelong love affair with human talent of every sort begin? Is it just part of your nature?
I think I have a call to be a teacher, and of course I started out in public instruction and then moved into my own human resource practice when I began to write about these subjects that we're talking about, creative living and a worshipful life like that. I would have to say that the love of talent seems to be something that is beyond age. In other words, I see it in the very young, talented and gifted one-year-olds practically, and I see it in the very old, in centenarians who are still sparkling with what we can only call the Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. And it's just so obvious to me that if we're looking at aging, what we call aging, this is a perfect season to be developing that sparkle.
And before people start turning their dials or switching to some other station because it says, "Don't call me old, I'm just awakening," and it's spiritual encouragement for later life. Yeah. This book is not just for older adults, is it?
No. This is really, basically I'm setting out a framework to people of all ages, saying, look, there are some things that we can actually do early on in life that will make all of life vital and fun and joyful, and we'll, you said in your story, let them come alone, Jesus said. Well, I think this walking out of our talent is something we do alone. We make our decisions to live fully in the deepest recesses of our heart, and then we have to walk it out in daily life. So, in a sense, this is a book for everybody.
And you speak about mutual encouragement, and that's what will sustain some of the joys of companionship.
You know, really, there are some competencies, if I can call it that, some skills. And again, this is whatever age you are. And one of the ones I see again and again in people that are robustly enjoying their lives is this ability to connect with other people, to stay connected, no matter where you are, no matter what you're going through. You know, there was a CNN study, and this, of course, will relate to anybody who's listening, and it talked about the loss of jobs that is happening in the U.S. right at this time, after 9/11 specifically, and reported that there was a depression that resulted from that job loss that could last up to 2 years. So one of the ameliorating factors in this sense that we're alone in the dark times of our life, of course, comes from a life of worship. But another one comes from our companions. And I think it's a skill to connect with those people that won't let us feel sorry for ourselves, and give us a good kick in the pants when we need it, give us a joke when we need it, be there when we call on the phone, that type of thing. And, of course, we have to do it for others as well.
If indeed we are to learn more about the concept of successful aging, or we will want to if we are to believe the facts that accompany the publicity materials about this book that came from Paulus Press. And the facts there are, first of all, the number of people over age 85 will quadruple by the year 2050.
Right.
If you're alive in the year 2020, which isn't really that far away, and I would be 80 years old by that time.
Yeah, you'll be here, God willing, and me too, and probably most of our audience.
But the thing about it is, if you're alive in the year 2020, there's a good chance you'll live into your hundreds.
That's right. That's right. And this is so exciting. It's exciting if you have a model of aging in your mind. You know, one of the points that I'm making in this book, and of course, again, this works for any age, that we merge with what we notice. And one of the models that we've been given of aging is kind of disease and deprivation. In fact, people don't even like to hear about anything related to aging because of that. But what I'm suggesting is that we have a new model. And that new model, we can look at people who are 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, and find individuals who are totally inspiring. For example, if you look at Mike Wallace and the whole crew on 60 Minutes, which is one of the most popular shows on air today and has been for years and years, he's in his 80s. If you look at the Supreme Court justices, most of them are in their 80s. People like Eartha Kitt in their 80s. Mary Baker Eddy, when she was in her 80s, she founded the Christian Science Monitor, which is still going strong today. And I'm not suggesting only famous people, but you can look at your own neighborhood and see individuals, and I'm suggesting that we do this, that we activate a kind of hunting process, an observation process, and look at people who are living well way, way into later life. And this is exciting for us then because it's encouraging.
And so as I read from the preface of your book, what looks to the senses as the end of life is truly the beginning, and what most of us have considered to be over the hill has changed.
It definitely has changed. But here again, I'm really, I'm speaking on two levels. On the one level, I'm talking about what we notice in active elderly all around us, that there is that sea change. On the other hand, I'm talking on a deeper level, and I'm saying that if we have that prayerful communion with God, the time of life when we get that reward of that is where we realize that, like it says in I think the book of Exodus, that God has set eternity in our hearts. So this life is it's just such a short time in a way for us to learn that and step into that eternity joyfully.
Mm-hmm. And so what you're telling us throughout the book is that we need to rethink our old false assumptions, that we should discuss our lives in spiritual terms, not ageist, that spiritual awakening stirs our longing for the new or the familiar, the untried, the impossible dream. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that you've put your finger right on it when you talk about assumptions, because it's our assumptions that shape our reality. And we don't appreciate how much that is true on a day-to-day basis. You know, George Burns, the comedian, used to say when people asked him, how did you live so long and how could you still be entertaining people and you're 99 years old or whatever he was, and he said that the thing that he did was to fall in love with his future. Mm-hmm. This goes back to what I was saying about depression, that when we lose a job, we're depressed because something that we fell in love with for the future has been taken from us. Of course, this happens when we lose a friend or when we lose a parent or whatever. But we can cultivate that joy if we understand the principle behind it. And the principle is we have to recreate ourselves and fall in love with something new in the future.
And that happens when we begin, you write, to center ourselves in the Spirit, to awaken spiritually, and then that is to endure, that we can sense something sacred in the invisible. I'm always fascinated by the mysteries of life around us, because I think there is so much to, maybe not always to learn from them, although there is something to learn, as much as to experience from them, and to learn in that sense, and to understand that, as you write, at the ground of our being, we are ageless and we never old, because there is a part of our being that is eternal. It never ages.
That's exactly right. And there was no beginning and there is no end to it. And that, of course, is our spirit, the soul. I have sometimes we talk in this way and people say, yes, but what does that mean in practical terms? Well, in practical terms, it's on an individual basis. And that's why I recommend we look around us. For example, I have a neighbor who's in his 80s. He's lived here on this remote coast of Northern California, where I am most of the time. He's totally blind, and I think he's been blind since birth. Now, there are people who can't live in the country at 20 years old alone, and here he is blind, and he's lived alone all of his life. And he must exercise or something, because I recently saw him in the market, and he looks extremely buff. You know what I mean?
Yes.
He looks very, he's tan, he's healthy, his cheeks have color. He has a college student that takes him around on what I suppose is his errand run. And I was amazed that he looks better today than he looked when I first moved here 20 years ago. So this is what I mean by walking out that interior vitality. So something starts that's joyful on the inside, a little seed that we have planted, some kind of enthusiasm. And then, little by little, we begin to express that outwardly, so that other people around us are taken up with it. And you brought up earlier the point of encouragement teams. I think we encourage people just by the way we walk into a room.
Mm-hmm.
And the point I make also in this book, and it's been a bias of mine for a long, long time, and that is that as we get older, we have a responsibility to keep ourselves inspiring other people.
Yes.
It's not their responsibility to pick us up all the time. And this is harsh words, but I think that's sort of what Jesus was saying, too.
Right. They're harsh words, but perhaps it's only because it's a difficult lesson for some to believe. Because you point out that when we are inordinately fearful of aging, it means that we have neglected life's spiritual dimension. And that's where I think that whole aspect of education that is so important to you, that we learn our boredoms, you write, our apathies and our regressive responses to the world around us, especially when we feel old and useless. So we can learn those lessons, and we can pay attention to that, or we can pay close attention to what is happening within us.
That's right. And along those lines about learning, there was a study that I quote that looked at senior athletes. As a matter of fact,
yes.
They found 3 traits in the senior athletes that they are recommending to other people who want to remain, who want to live well all of life. And the first one is, and all of these, by the way, are educational. First is to stay current. These are people that read the paper, and they learn computer and email. They read books. They go out with friends and so forth. But they're current. The second one we've talked about, and that is to be open to new friends. And you really need your friends, because the older you get, the more likely it is that you're either going to move, or somebody's going to move away from you, or maybe pass away. So you want to stay connected to other people and not have that be such a trauma every time something changes in your life that you lose track of people that you care for. And the third one is probably the most difficult to discuss, and that is to have a semblance of control in your life. Now, everybody can't be in control, let's say, financially, or maybe one has to move to a different neighborhood. But I'm suggesting this aspect of control as cultivating what I call a voice. In other words, to be assertive, to learn how to speak up for what you want in the face of, let's say, young people, the kids around you that maybe put you down for being older, or you lose a job because you're not as young as you used to be, there are so many possibilities. Individuals who have the ability to say yes and no as if they mean it seem to have a kind of authority. And again, that's encouraging not only to them and to their friends, but to other people.
Yeah, you could very well be speaking of my mother, who died a year ago this coming Tuesday on November 5th. And that might seem, well, she died at a pretty young age, 84, but
yes.
Mother could have died 40, 50 years before that for all the problems she had. So if you put it into context, she lived a very long life. She stayed current. She read the newspaper and everything she could get her hand on, books, magazines every day, was a clipping service for my sister, was always telling us about new things were happening. She stayed connected. She had all kinds of, although she couldn't get out as well towards the end of her life, she stayed connected with people, talked on the phone for people for hours, not, one person, but other people called her. They just liked to call and talk to her, and she would offer whatever it is she could. To us, it was just real practical advice that she gave from her wisdom, and she certainly was in control. It was still her house, and it was still her life, and she was going to do it the way that she wanted to.
And sometimes that's hard for the family to appreciate. But here again is why I think we need conversation on these subjects, because the healthy older person is going to be someone that has a bit of the curmudgeon in them. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They're going to be someone, for example, a friend of mine told me about her father, who's in his 90s, and who recently remarried. He's a widow, and he remarried a woman in her 80s. And she said to me, well, Marcia, he's not a particularly spiritual person, but he knows his own mind. And to me, that's a very spiritual trait. It really is. And I give him a lot of credit for having the gumption to take a chance on love and companionship late in life, when people around him probably would have said, oh, what do you want to do that for?
Yes.
So there are all kinds of ways to live out the personal values that we have, the authority that we have, the joy of life, the independence that we have. And you can do that almost anywhere.